Party, here with our illustrious General Counsel, Juan-Carlos Planas. We call him JC. I think you can too. JC, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. And it's always great to be your consigliere.
Yeah.
My consigliere of the Democratic Party chair.
You are my number one advisor, and I call you every day. And so I appreciate you always taking my calls.
So thank you for having me. It's been a great year. It's good to do a year in review. Think of where we were this time last year. It was a dark day, and thanks to you, Madam Chair, I think we're past the dark days, heading into the light.
Absolutely. I think back a year ago, and it seemed almost insurmountable what we were up against, what we were facing. And, we came together as a team and decided we were going to build from the bottom up. And thanks to you and everybody else that has, stood up for the Democratic Party, for our democratic values, I think 2025 was the best year that I've personally had in a long time, even though it's the hardest year I've ever had in my entire life.
It's good and bad. When I look at the close of 2025, I think what our gains are, how we've gained momentum. I think our fundraising is doing well. Obviously, this latest election cycle has been excellent, but 2025 is still a very bittersweet year. We have seen atrocities. I mean, you are an immigration attorney. I just had a conversation with someone who's here legally. She is a Cuban she's still on parole, has not been revoked. She wanted to go visit her brother in Ocala, but she's afraid to drive up there because people who are legal are getting stopped by ICE. So as wonderful as our achievements have been, I think we have some dark days ahead still, and there's been really dark parts.
I think that's the you said bittersweet, and I think that's really a true statement. The reason that we have been able to rebuild and have the motivation, I think, to rebuild was knowing what we were going to face this year and beyond. And I think some of the reasons for our wins have been that we have been able to show the alternative to the atrocities that you mentioned. When you mentioned this Cuban woman who has legal status, parole is a legal status in this country, you're absolutely right. I am not advising clients that they should travel at all, not by car, not by plane. I actually tell my clients, whether, even when they're legal, in terms of they have a pending asylum application, they have a work permit, they have a valid driver's license, valid insurance, I say don't travel at all, and actually minimize the amount of time you drive. You should only be driving when it's absolutely necessary, because you're absolutely right. We're seeing people being detained when they should not be being detained. We see them at detention facilities that are over capacity or not getting proper medical treatment. We've just had another detainee die in immigration detention. Someone who had type 1 diabetes, who did not receive his medication, completely preventable death happened in ICE custody. Yeah. That is unacceptable. And I think what you said, just to, not to rant a little bit, but there are going to be darker days ahead of us as a country, as a nation, especially come January 1st, because we've seen what the Republicans have done in Congress. They have refused to pass any kind of spending bill or any kind of bill that would allow for the ACA subsidies to continue. Not for 1 year, not for 3 years. And so I was talking to someone yesterday whose health insurance is going to go from $750 a month to $2,500 a month.
And that's not just ACA recipients.
Right.
Part of the reason that the American Health Care Act was passed was just on free market terms, that if more people were buying health insurance, the cost for everyone would go down.
Right.
What's going to happen is people are going to drop their coverage because we don't have that mandatory purchase, because that was struck down. But when fewer people, have health insurance, the cost goes up for everybody else. And this thought that, we just shouldn't give, I saw a text or social media post by Bill Cassidy, United States Senator, who's a doctor, but he's like, we shouldn't be giving the money to the insurance companies. I'm like, well, but you guys created this system. They created the system where health insurance companies were the gatekeepers of our health care. So to say now, after a Republican-designed system where the insurance companies are in charge, to say, well, we're just not going to give them the money is irresponsible. There's no plan to put anything in place. You want to go back to the 70s where, you had catastrophic care, where some people were just being treated as indigent. You're going to have to reform the entire system, and they don't have a plan to do that.
Well, listen, not even the 70s. I mean, frankly, before the ACH was passed in the early aughts, we would be denied for pre-existing conditions. Yeah. My sister had ovarian cysts at 19. She had health insurance, but there was she was not covered for her reproductive system. Yeah. We forget because it's been, we've had this where the system where we couldn't do because of the ACA, insurance companies cannot deny people coverage for pre-existing conditions, and if they eliminate this law, which they have tried to do for many years, and I think that's what they're trying to do, and they're trying to undermine it. They're trying to blame, this whole process of not passing the subsidies is because they want to just completely repeal the ACA. Because what's the point of the ACA if you don't have the subsidies?
The irony is, of course, they know it's working, they know it's popular, but this is a thorn in their side because they didn't do it. This was an Obama. If you read Obama's memoir, he talks about he gave Republicans opportunities at every single step to join in and comment on it and have things that they wanted in it, and they refused him. Of course, during that time, I was a Republican. I opposed the ACA. It really wasn't until COVID that I realized, thank God, that we have this, because imagine how many people, would have, a COVID diagnosis would have been a bankruptcy diagnosis. Absolutely. Had they not had ACA. Even with great insurance nowadays, we still live in a country where a diagnosis of cancer is equivalent to a diagnosis of future bankruptcy.
Yep.
And even with good insurance.
It's fascinating. I want to talk about this because you said something very important. You used to be a Republican. You were elected to the state legislature as a Republican. What really changed your mind and moved you over from somebody who, again, opposed the ACH initially, and now you see the value in it?
So I was always in trouble with the Republican Party as a Republican member of the legislature because I was more moderate than some, especially on social issues. I was always pro-choice. I've always been a proponent of LGBTQ rights. So that put me at odds on social issues with my party. But I fought for stem cell research.
Of course. When
I was a Republican in the House. In fact, I led a group of moderate Republicans to join with Democrats to defeating a ban on stem cell cloning that the Speaker wanted because it would have hampered research. So I was always on the cusp, and I had issues with the way the party was going, and the party kept moving right. Like I say, it was Trump in many ways that made me not be a Republican, but it was COVID really that made me a Democrat. This libertarian thought that government should get out of people's lives and people can resolve for themselves in a catastrophic emergency in a pandemic. That's just complete fallacy. Yep. We need government to help people in their lives. The other thing is, I'm somewhat of a futurist. If we are going to move into the future, we can't do this without the government. In fact, government is just a compromise and a contract of the people to say we're moving forward together into the future. And I think you find a lot of the people that are the base, this hardcore, 40% of the Republican MAGA base are people that want to go backwards
Yeah.
rather than forward. And I think that's a problem.
Yeah. It's interesting. I always like to think about the role of government, like you said, is to make people's lives better with the least intrusive means possible. Yeah. And what's so fascinating, talking about these issues, like, you said you were always, on the kind of left end of the spectrum for social issues, myself included. But I now find myself actually being able to accurately describe myself as a fiscal conservative in comparison to the current Republican Party. I mean, the way they are destroying our economy, it just does not make sense. It's like economic policy here is wasteful.
It's anti-capitalist.
It's anti-capitalist.
I mean, tariffs are the complete opposite of what a capitalist system is. You're trying to control the market. A capitalist system means that as a consumer, I should have the right and ability to get any product from anywhere that I want, when all of a sudden my buying power is restricted as to where I can get my products from. That's the most anti-capitalist thing there is. The government is now trying to invest in some companies. That's socialism. Yeah. It is the definition of socialism.
The means of production.
What bothers the heck out of me always is when the governor says the term woke socialism. I'm like, woke is the opposite of socialism. Socialism requires uniformity. It requires everybody to be the same. Diversity is antithetical to that.
Exactly.
We want diversity because we are not socialists. We want there to be diverse opinions, diverse products, diverse people, because that's what grows our livelihoods and our economy. We're in a city that is built on diversity. When you look at the tourism base of Miami and Miami Beach, it is based on LGBTQ tourism. It's based on the Hispanic culture. It's based on our, even though we're a peninsula, we have an island mentality sometimes. It's based on that. It's this diversity that has added dollars to our economy, and to turn our back on it is economically foolish.
It's economically foolish, and it's also like just foolish in general, because, I always think it's interesting. You're a parent, I'm a parent, trying to tell your kids not to do something or not to be something, or trying to repress, children, just like if you try this with adults, it's even worse.
Yes.
The more you try to prevent people from being who they are, the more there's going to be a backlash against that. And so it's foolish in any stretch of the imagination. It's like we were talking about the rainbow crosswalks. Again, not allowing people to celebrate who they are and let people, I always say, just like let people live. I mean, it's fundamentally, it's not American. That's why I said it's not American.
At all. And then especially when you look at where are the places that had the rainbow crosswalks, these are places that have a significant economic boom created by the LGBTQ plus community, whether it's St. Pete. By the way, kudos to the town of St. Petersburg, who have put rainbows on their bike racks.
I love it.
Because there was nothing in the law that prohibited the bike racks. They prohibited the crosswalks. So now they've done rainbow bike racks. Kudos to St. Pete. But when you look at some of these towns, they have economic interest in the LGBTQ community. Here in Miami-Dade County, we have neighborhoods like Morningside that were neighborhoods in decline. And when they became, the gay meccas, it lifted them up, and it lifts up the community. The LGBTQ community in Miami-Dade is a significant part of our culture, of our heritage, and of our economy.
Absolutely. And more, I mean, like, look, we want, and again, speaking to the economic effects, we want people to come here and feel safe and feel welcome. We don't want people to feel afraid on our streets. We don't want to feel like they're not welcome to be here. Look, I understand we have a significant population in Miami-Dade County that's very conservative, very religious, but that doesn't have to be at odds. It doesn't have to be at odds. You get to be as religious and as conservative as you want to be.
I could get into how it's not really religious to be anti-LGBTQ, but it would take an hour-long show. But I remember in the legislature, Republicans even saying on debates on money that we were investing, Florida is in the glamour business. Well, this is completely antithetical now to Florida being in the glamour business, because if we are this highlight of, fashion culture, the gay community is part of that.
Absolutely.
How can we be in the glamour business if we're turning our backs on our LGBTQ brothers and sisters?
Yeah, frankly, and that's the same thing with our immigrant community. We shouldn't be turning our backs on anybody. Yeah. That's really what it comes down to, is we shouldn't be turning our backs on anyone. And going back to this healthcare situation, because again, we're at the end of the year. We're celebrating, various holidays. We've got Hanukkah, we've got Christmas coming up, we've got Kwanzaa, we've got New Year's. Eid, we have a lot of these holidays at this time, but come, January 1st, January 2nd, we're going to be facing a real crisis here. And it's interesting, just going back to this, just the ACH, the Affordable Care Act, and the subsidies. Look, they don't want the insurance companies to profit. Okay, since when are they against corporate profit? Yeah, it's very weird.
They created a system and now they're against it. I think another thing we have to talk about is our escalating food prices. We saw now in the past couple of months escalating food prices, in part because of the immigration crackdown, but we're about to see it even worse. Our agriculture season is not the summer. Our agriculture season starts now. Florida has a very thriving agricultural industry. And without a lot of these immigrants, if even the legal immigrants are in fear, we're going to see, fruits and vegetables rotting in the field with no one to pick them. We're going to see increase in prices, and we're not going to be able to sell our product. This is something that's important to Florida. If you look at aquaculture in the Keys, one of the biggest immigration crackdowns has been Monroe County. Well, this is the seafood that we send to all other parts of the country, to all other states. This is impacting now our way of life and our local economy in ways that we didn't think was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I have been sounding this alarm for quite some time because it's to me, it's basic economics. You don't have to have a degree in economics to understand supply and demand. And when you lose your labor force, then you're going to see increased prices because, and at the same time, we're also losing consumers. So we're seeing this affect our restaurant industry here in South Florida. We have this amazing food culture. You mentioned all the benefits of living here in South Florida, but we have, part of our glamour culture is we have great food. I went to an amazing restaurant this weekend, and it was not full. I was like, what is happening? This is a place that you could never get a reservation for.
People are spending money on other things, and they're going to low down on restaurants. Restaurants also don't have the capacity with the cancellation of TPS. And again, the people on TPS were legal immigrants, but when that was canceled, that took away a lot of the server population. So we're having restaurants having to raise prices because they have to pay more to attract labor because labor's not coming to them. Mm-hmm. The food prices are up. So with everything up, people are spending money on Christmas gifts and they're not going out to dinner.
Absolutely. I mean, we stay inside as much as possible because it's very expensive to go out. So we have all the Florida Democratic Party and our chair, Nikki Fried, who is amazing. I just can't say enough about her leadership. And, we have worked in conjunction this last year with FDP, the Florida Democratic Party, here locally. And their support has been tremendous. But she has created what's called the Pendulum Project, recognizing that as a pendulum in 2024 moved in one direction, I should say it was this direction, it's moving this direction now. We are going to take advantage of that pendulum. And I always think, JC, what is the end game for the Republicans? And then how can we show an alternative to this? I'm thinking back, again, sorry to take it back to healthcare. It's just present for me because I think of all the people who are going to suffer, people who are not going to renew their coverage, people who are going to use emergency rooms again as their primary care healthcare. And then they're also, of course, going to face tremendous medical bills because that is very expensive. we had an opportunity when we were passing the ACA to go single payer or to have some kind of private public option like Medicare for all. And we chose to go.
Or like Medicare for all who want it.
Right, exactly.
Like Pete Buttigieg had suggested. Spain has a very similar system. I know you lived in Spain when you were in college. Spain has a public healthcare system.
College.
After college, you're right. Spain has a public healthcare system that also has a private buy-in. You can go there. I remember when my daughter got sick, we were in the Canary Islands, so we couldn't get to one of the public clinics, but they had private doctors by the resorts. A system like that where everybody has some sort of basic coverage and others can go private if they'd like should be the way that we need to go. And the truth is, I hate also when they call this socialist. This is the most capitalist system possible. If you are a capitalist country, your goal is to raise your GDP. If your workers are afraid of getting sick, you can't raise your GDP because you have workers that aren't working. If they do not have basic needs met, how are we going to raise our GDP? If we want more manufacturing, well, guess what? We have to take care of workers.
Right. So I had we could talk. I mean, I know like these topics are so important to really think about in a big context. You mentioned COVID before, and exactly what you're saying about workers is very interesting because I did some research trying to find out how many people left the labor force in the United States because of COVID, something related to COVID. So either they passed away, they left the workforce because they were sick themselves with long COVID, or they went into early retirement because they had that option, or maybe they were caring for family members.
We had a lot of doctors that went into early retirement during COVID.
Yeah. So the number looks like, just based on the estimates that I've done, the cursory research that I've done, it's about 4.2 million Americans left the labor force during the COVID pandemic, and they have not come back. And interestingly enough, that is similar to the amount of immigrants that came in at that, shortly thereafter. And I've always talked about being very, I find border security to be very important. I do believe in border security, and I think that I can have some criticism of how Biden dealt with border security issues, but we have to think about the counterfactual. What would have happened otherwise? Like what would have happened if we did not have people coming in to do the work when people left the labor force?
Not only that, but America has been in negative population growth, which means population decline. For every, 2 adults, it's only 1.5 children. So you can't develop an economy if you're in population decline. We need immigrants because we need more people here. So, what's funny is at a town hall, I asked this of Maria Vera Salazar, who has her Dignity Act. I go, well, wait a minute. If we're in population decline, don't we need more legal immigrants? Why doesn't your bill account for more legal immigrants? And she stammered and stuttered and couldn't answer the question because she knows that there's no way you're going to pass increases in legal immigration in Washington right now.
Wait, because there's a Republican majority.
Yes.
And that's to say, yeah.
Listen, we're unfortunately, when you look at what's going on, you have to say that this is particularly about Black and brown people. When you have the president disparaging, immigrants from Africa, but he's allowing white Afrikaners under the false pretense. This is 1990s Serbia ethnic cleansing is the beginnings that we're seeing. I mean, they want fewer people that don't look like them, and it's a problem.
It's interesting because, again, going back to what is the end game here, I think about how does this part of the party, because, again, it's not the entire party, but it's about 40% of this party.
40% of the Republicans.
But it has a very significant portion, and they're afraid of Trump. They're afraid to stand up to him. They're afraid to say something different. Maria Abrera Salazar knows that a real comprehensive immigration reform, and again, I'm going to say this, there's no dignity without a path to citizenship.
At all. Well, she bashed TPS, but, her plan creates like this second tier of residency, which is like glorified TPS.
Yeah.
Why are you bashing TPS when your plan basically creates like a glorified TPS?
Well, and now she's talking
For
out of
those
the other
watching, TPS is temporary protective status. It sort of means you can't get deported, but it can be revoked. But you're the immigration expert, though.
No, that's correct. Unless you commit it can be not designated again. So it's temporary, and then there's a limitation, although it had never been used until President Trump. But also it can be revoked if you commit a serious misdemeanor or any felony. Yeah. So it's only for people who basically do the right thing, and then here they're productive members of our society, and that had never been revoked before. And now Maria Vera Salazar is talking out of the other side of her mouth, saying, "Oh no, this was a mistake to end TPS." But again, it's just whatever is politically expedient. And going back to your point about only wanting people that look like them, the fact of the matter is that's part of the reason why they are limiting our reproductive freedom. They want more white women to have
babies,
white babies, and listen, you hear some of these people that are at the Turning Point conference that they just had this weekend.
There's a control aspect on the limitation of reproductive freedom. There is a control. Abortion in this country was legal until women could become emancipated. And then all of a sudden we started banning abortion. But back in the day, a father could force their daughter to have an abortion. A husband could force the wife. I'm an attorney ad litem on 2 dependency cases in our dependency system. And the state of Florida is not pro-life. Because if they were pro-life, they would spend more to take care of the kids that we already have in the system. Yeah. This is about controlling women. This is about, again, trying to have more white births. This is it's
very dangerous.
It's a very dangerous thing. I don't think they have one end game. I think you have factions with different agendas, and they don't have a comprehensive plan. Republicans have not had an end game since the days of George W. Bush. George W. Bush may have committed some mistakes, but he wanted to protect the country. He wanted to end global terrorism. He wanted to promote democracy in the Middle East. Did he commit some mistakes while doing that? Yes, but he had a plan and an end game. When Obama comes in, Republicans shifted having any sort of concrete plans. And that's really when my psyche started turning, because Republicans just wanted to defeat Obama at anything he did. And the end game was just saying no and defeating Obama rather than having their own plan.
The Tea Party.
Yeah.
Well, and now, but I would argue that the Project 2025 and the Heritage, Heritage Foundation. That's it's a blueprint. It's a blueprint for an agenda, and certainly Turning Point. Listening to some of the things that they have said, one of the things that the vice president said this weekend was, nobody can be ashamed for saying that they're proud to be white, or what was it? I mean, it was so ludicrous. I'm like, we have history books that show there's nothing. There's never been any anti-whiteness in the United States. It's never.
And now racists have perceived, combating racism as anti-white. But, one of the things that, because there's so many stories going on, a lot of things get buried. But Trump is beating the drumbeat again now in the Smithsonian. And my family and I were there over the summer, and we got to go to the African American History Museum, which has this amazing depiction of slavery. My 2 preteen kids leave in tears. And, my son, who was 12, is like, I knew slavery was bad, but I didn't know any of these things. And I'm like, even this has been sort of sanitized. But Trump is now going after the depictions of slavery in the African American History Museum and other depictions that he doesn't like or that his radical white base doesn't like. We're getting now to the point where they want to erase history.
Yeah.
And this is something the Nazis did.
And the thing is like to me, it's so, I'm from Texas, I'm a white woman. I think it's understanding your history, it's not a bad thing. And also embracing different cultures, embracing the immigrants that have created your country, embracing all of our populations who have made this country what it is. It doesn't take anything away from, former, colonizers that were here, or the colonists rather, colonizers, same word, right? But what I'm saying is, understanding your history doesn't take away from anything. It enriches us because we can move forward. Yes. Something you said before, move forward with the knowledge that we want to do better every single day.
You can't really celebrate the achievements of someone without recognizing the negatives in them as well. And again, these Republicans have said, oh, they're vilifying Thomas Jefferson. No, Thomas Jefferson was a brilliant writer to which we owe a lot in this country. He had major faults. His owning of slaves was a major part of this. But you can't really honor Thomas Jefferson without recognizing what the negatives. You can't honor George Washington, who was a massive slave owner, without recognizing the negatives. These men lived in their times, and we have to recognize that a lot of the things done in their times was wrong, but it doesn't take away the greatness of these men.
Or their accomplishments.
Thomas Jefferson, George Washington will always belong on Mount Rushmore and will always be heroes of the American Republic, not despite their faults, but in many ways because of their faults. That's what history means. The study of history also understands that these great men, their faults probably did, contributed to some of the great things as well. So, this thought that Republicans have that we're going to denigrate our American heroes because we acknowledge their faults is just complete bunk. It's not what history's about.
Yeah. Well, we are way past time, and we could have this conversation for many hours. So we should get a long form podcast where we can do the Joe Rogan thing. But until then, we were going to say goodbye for now. Thank you for being here.
And we ended the year on a great note with these wins.
Absolutely.
So, yes.
And we're going to keep on going, and we're going to keep on fighting for what's right. We're going to keep, as you said, moving forward because we're not going to go back. We're going to move forward. And so thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Merry Christmas, and Happy New Year.
Thank you.